Hello, my name is Ingi Rafn Ólafsson and I'm the director of the World Printers Forum at WAN-IFRA. I would like to welcome you to this webinar, what we call How Do We Promote Paper? And I will share my screen here now. Yes, I welcome to this webinar two speakers. So Josh and Ulbe, I would like to see you now if you can open up your cameras and mics. Thank you. Great, Josh. Good to see you. Hi, Ulbe. Yes.
Hi.
This webinar is called How to Promote Paper, and for a reason, because I think we as a newspaper industry maybe should be better at promoting paper and telling the right facts about paper. And we have absolutely the best people to tell you the truth here today and the facts. And we will get back to that in a moment. The agenda here today is the intro, the presentations of both Josh and Ulbe, and afterwards we will have a Q&A. For our next webinar, just to present that a little bit, we will have a webinar next month on the March 23rd, a week later than you usually do. That's because of some reasons we could not do the other week, but usually it's the third week of the month, but this is going to be the last week of the month. So March 23rd, Dr. Michael Haas will talk about the carbon footprint. And it's going to be very interesting because he's been actively helping companies how to reduce their carbon footprint, and a very interesting topic, I can assure you. I also want to remind you of the World Printer Summit that is going to take place this fall on October 11th and 13th. We will start shortly presenting that, but save these dates in your calendar because this is going to be a very exciting event. Okay. Yeah, we are going to talk about in the World Printer Summit is the topic is sustainable business partnership, and by that we mean we talk about the paper markets, we talk about energy savings. We also will have a special report presented there about mineral oil-free inks, carbon footprint, of course, and other very interesting topics. So it's going to be a good event, I promise you. I strongly urge you to subscribe to our newsletter. That's here in this link here. You have to go to our website, newsletters, and there you can select the newsletters you want to get from WAN-IFRA. Good info there. We will, of course, have a Q&A session after the speakers have done both. Then we'll have the Q&A session. You can post your questions in the Q&A bar in Zoom. And we will try to get through as many as we can. We cannot promise to get through all of them, but we will hope to get to some of them. So I will stop my sharing and I will invite Ulbe Jelluma to be our speaker today. He's the first speaker today. Ulbe Jelluma is the Executive Director of PrintPower Europe, the initiative promoting the use of printed media for use in integrated advertising and retail campaigns. Printed media include newspapers, magazines, direct mail, door drops, books, large formats, posters, signage, and other material printed on paper, vinyl, polyester, textile, or other substrates. PrintPower addresses the users of print media, agencies, and advertisers via in-house presentations, conferences. The website is printpower.eu. LinkedIn, Twitter, and monthly newsletter. The key message of PrintPower is that often ignored effectiveness of printed media as a standalone channel as part of our integrated campaign. Ulbe is running PrintPower since start of 2009. As a marketing consultant and a former advertising agency head, he has an excellent understanding of what brands, advertising, and media agencies need. Having worked for publishers, printers, papers, and digital printer equipment manufacturers, he has knowledge it takes to talk about the future of print media. The floor is yours, Ulbe.
Thank you so much, Ingi. Thank you for your introduction. Let me share my presentation with you. Bear with me for a second. I don't see it on my screen. Do you see my screen?
I only see one bar. I don't see the full screen. So maybe you have to select it again, try to shut it off again and share again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Should I try?
I'm sorry, guys. Well, I'll try again. I'll do another something else now.
Okay.
I'm sorry for that. Here we are. Well, welcome at this event. As Ingi announced this, how do we promote paper? And I've made it, how do we promote print? Because at least what we do is promote paper that is printed on. And one of the key issues we have, in my perception, is that it's all about the perception of print. And I'll get to that in a second when we talk about how to promote. Let me first start with, when we talk about promoting print, what is it that we want to promote? What is exactly the goal of our promotion? And if I look at newspapers, one can see a number of different goals for promotion. And well, you could identify them as being gaining more readers or subscribers, gaining more advertising revenues, boost the quality of journalism, talk about sustainability, or even get more shelf space in the distribution outlets. So what is important when we talk about promotion is, what is it exactly that we want to promote? And how are we going to do that? Is part of the goal we decide to work on. And in order to identify the goal, one should look at, well, where do we earn our money? How do we get to our revenues? And if you take a look at printed newspapers, then there are three main sources. There's the advertising, there's the reader subscriptions or free or single copy sales, and of course there are some other activities like brand activities or commercial deals. And it is interesting to see that readers' revenues and advertising revenues are by far the most important, and that over the last 10 years, these streams have changed places in terms of importance. So readers' revenues and advertising revenues have always been into a certain proportion, but given the fact now that digital newspapers are coming next to printed newspapers, the importance of subscriptions has increased quite dramatically versus advertising. So there are some major movements here that we need to take into account. So if we look at the revenue streams and if we think about the goals, then this is what PrintPower is focusing on. We focus on advertising revenues for printed channels, including newspapers. So how can we improve the position of newspapers as an advertising channel for advertisers? That's what we focus on. And just as a reminder, how is that situation between advertisers and newspapers? Well, the advertisers in the newspapers, when we talk about advertising, is dominated by two consultants. There's a creative advertising agency developing the creative work, the ads, and there's a media agency developing a media plan. And for us, what is important is to understand how the media agency is developing its media plan. Obviously, today, there are probably no advertisers who use only one single channel. So probably no advertiser will use only newspapers. So it's all up to a media mix. And how do media agencies make this media mix? What are the criteria they use? Well, these are a number of criteria: reach, effectiveness, attention, cost, and sustainability. And those selection criteria determine what kind of channels, newspapers, magazines, radio, TV, or whatever you have, are being selected in the media mix. And by far, the most important for advertisers is the effectiveness. Advertisers don't want to spend 100 euros on an advert that doesn't work. So they are looking for advertising channels like newspapers where the invested money has also a proportional effectiveness. So they want to spend money on channels that have an effectiveness, obviously related to a certain level of costs. So it is effectiveness that is for advertisers and for media agencies often the most important criteria. So who is involved in this decision making? Obviously the advertisers, and among the advertisers, it's the marketing function, it's the advertising function. In agencies, there are planners, people who think about a strategy for media. Creative people are involved, but also client service directors, so the client-facing people within agencies. And what we see more and more in media agencies is that data scientists become very important because they deliver the kind of data that is required for media planners to do their work. So what is PrintPower doing in this? Well, we are talking to a community of marketing, media, and advertising professionals that are interested in gaining more insight in this, in the role of printed advertising channels. They want to understand what it is that printed advertising channels can deliver in the media mix. And that is a key thing to do, because today there's a lot more interest and attention going to other channels, like online, like TV, like radio. Other channels are also getting a lot of interest from media agencies and from advertisers. And what we need to do is we need to create interest as well for printed channels. So that is what we do. And our community consists of about 25 to 30,000 visitors to our website. We have a database of 8,000 people, and we have now almost 1,600 followers on LinkedIn. So that is our community. And we work, our active countries are UK, France, and Germany. And we'll ask why these countries? Well, most of the headquarters of advertisers, but also of their agencies, are based in London, Paris, or Berlin, or Munich. So we cover the most important countries in Europe, and we cover the headquarters. And the headquarters are often responsible for multinational campaigns. So we need to be where the decisions are being taken. So that's where we are active with PrintPower. And I mentioned that the people we'd like to reach, and we do that in, if we look at a website visitors geographic description, then we see that Western Europe is representing 35% of the visitors to our website, Scandinavia 4%, and North America 20%. So in terms of geographic, we are doing quite well. If you have a look at the pie chart at the right top, then you'll notice that half of the visitors are younger than 34 years old. So whereas a lot of people are saying, well, printed channels are more for people who are older, the interest into what we have to say is from a group that is younger than 50%, from a group that is younger than 34 years old. So we're reaching the junior and the mid-senior kind of people among our website visitors. And if we have a closer look at our followers online, then our visitors online in LinkedIn, then we notice that more than a quarter is representing the advertising industry and 4% is representing the newspaper publishers. So we have, in terms of audience, we're doing quite well in terms of description. So what is it that we want to establish? What's the goal of PrintPower? Well, we want to make PrintPower the ultimate destination for everything on printed channels advertising effectiveness. That is quite a sentence. What it basically says is that everybody who comes to our website need to find the information on effectiveness of different printed channels. So we are putting different kinds of information on the website in order to reach the different groups we want to reach. But obviously there are a couple of barriers. And probably the most important, as I mentioned at the beginning, the most important barrier for reaching people and for really having an impact on people is probably the existing perception. The perception of print media. And I want to share with you a piece of research done in the UK and in Belgium. And that research that is a comparison between two different groups. One group is the group of advertisers, media agencies and advertising agencies. And the other is not a group, but that are facts based upon research. And this is how it looks like. So we have a company called Ubiquity that did this research in 2020 and also in 2018. And what they did is, on the left-hand side, you see evidence. And the evidence column shows what research tells us about the performance of 10 different channels. And the research tells us that TV is top in terms of overall performance. And that newspapers are number 3, magazines are number 4, direct mail is number 6, if we talk about print channels. Then they asked also marketing, advertising, and media professionals what they think is the best overall performance of those 10 channels. So this is perception. So what we see there is that TV remains on the first position, like the research tells us. But if you then look for newspapers and magazines, the perception of newspapers and magazines is not as what the evidence shows us. There's a gap between what the evidence tells us about the overall performance and what the industry thinks is our performance. Newspapers are evidence-based, number 3 in terms of performance. If we ask the marketing and advertising professionals, they will say it's at the 8th place in the ranking. So there is a major gap between what people think and what the evidence shows us. So that's why I say, well, most of the problems we have are perception-based. We need to change that perception. So that is a key thing we need to do. And I'll get to how we do that in a second. Then there are 3 different other things that are very related to each other: different media consumption, the all digital world, and new generations. What we notice, obviously, is that the new generation, the younger generation, Generation Z, is using media in a very different way than my parents did. And that has to do with the fact that they're born in an all digital world, that they have very different platforms at their disposal, and that they use those platforms in a very different way than we do. They watch TV on their mobile, and they do things in a very different way than other generations did. And also on their agenda is less of printed channels. They don't read that often newspapers. They don't look that often into magazines as before, as other generations did. So there is this change of media consumption. And obviously also sustainability plays a role in communication. So how do we counter that? How are we going to counter this misperception of print? There are 3 things we're doing. We provide information, we provide insights, and inspiration. And let me show you what we do. So information is purely about the facts. We provide, like you see here, this is an infographic we produced last year about trust. And it compares trust of all different kind of channels in France. It provides lots of information about what the trust level is of the different channels, and it decomposes trust in different factors. So this is an infographic loaded with information that can be used by media agencies to further defend print media as a channel to be used in the media mix. But it's also information that you as salespeople from newspaper publishers or other people involved in newspapers can use to talk about in a positive way, to talk about the performance of newspapers. So that's information. Insights, we just published our annual Print Media Predictions 2023 booklet. If you go to our website, you can download it for free. And it has 8 different perspectives on how this year will look like for print media. And this gives the reader insights into the minds of very different people from very different industries. So we have somebody, this is the person you see on this slide is Tyler Brûlé. He is the founder of Monocle, Monocle magazine. And he has a very interesting view on what one of the major problems is for newspapers. And in a quote, he says, well, on a Sunday, it's easier to order a Pokeball than to get a Sunday's newspaper in Germany. So it's interesting, the kind of things he's referring to, and most of them are related to distribution, but it's interesting. And 7 other people give from their perspective also a view on developments for this year. And then finally, there's inspiration. We also want to talk to the creative people who often are not aware of what paper and print can offer in terms of creativity. So each year we publish a booklet for the love of print, and this booklet contains the winning cases of the Cannes Advertising Festival. Every year there are 10 cases that we promote, and again this is available for free on our website for you to have a look at. So effectiveness of advertising is our key message. But effectiveness of advertising comes into different forms. And I just want to share some forms of advertising that are effective. And that is those 2 examples are very much based upon the idea when you want to say it loud and clear, you use newspapers. When you have one thing to say and you want everybody to talk about it, in the morning at the coffee machine, well, use newspapers and guarantee you are talked about at the coffee machine in the morning. The ad on the left-hand side of this slide is for an advertising agency in New York. Madison Avenue was once the place to be for all the advertising agencies, but they announced that they've left Madison Avenue to go for a cheaper location. Is that any news? Probably not. But is it any news for advertisers? Well, maybe, because they get under the attention, or the advertisement gets the attention from the advertisers. And again, it is something they might say, oh yes, TDP, it creates awareness for the agency. This one you might be familiar with. When you want to say it loud and clear, you use newspapers. This is KFC advertising. They changed their logistic partner a couple of years ago, and that resulted in a lack of chicken to be delivered to their restaurants. So certain restaurants had to close because they didn't get any chicken. So they produced this apology ad to say sorry for what happened to the consumers. So that is when you have something to say and you want to make it loud and clear statement. But if you want to have effectiveness, you can also look at other measures. And this is an example from, again, Ubiquity study. And this shows the time and the attention people have for advertising in one of the channels and the business effects that might have. And what you can see here is that TV obviously has the highest level of viewing time of advertising on TV, and press and magazines the second are the second in terms of viewing time of advertising. But that in terms of effectiveness, the number of effects, press and magazines score very high, higher than the display advertising and social. So again, if you want to get people attention, then again, press and magazines are a very good choice to go for. So we have established some kind of authority in the market by being present at different seminars and webinars, and the last 2 years, obviously not in presentations, and that helps us to establish ourselves as an authority in this domain. If you want to know more about PrintPower, well, go and visit our website. I would say go and see on our LinkedIn page what we publish about facts and inspiration and insights. You can register on the website for our newsletter. You can mail me or you can call me for more information, and feel free to do that whenever you have questions. And I hope this has been, although very short, this has been interesting for you, and I hope you can take home some of the learnings of this presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ulbe. This was quite insightful, and you have you're doing a great job there at PrintPower, I see. I strongly encourage you to post the questions for Ulbe in the Q&A bar down below. You see it down below in our Zoom window. You can find the Q&A. Please post the questions there, and we will take them after they have spoken here, both of them. I present Josh Birch. Josh Birch is the TwoSides campaign manager. He's a marketing graduate, and Josh has been with TwoSides campaign for 4 years and leads development of the Love Paper campaign. I'm sure he will tell you a little bit about that, to help and tell the sustainable story of newspapers, magazines, and other paper products. Over to you, Josh.
Well, thank you, Ingi, for the introduction, and thank you, Ulbe, for setting the scene. I'll just share my screen. Okay, can I just check, Ingi, can you see my screen?
Yes, it's very good.
Good. Okay, so we'll start off. I'm here today from TwoSides to talk about print paper and paper packaging and the great environmental story that they have to tell. So just to give you a bit of information about TwoSides and who we are. TwoSides was founded in 2008 and is a global not-for-profit membership organization that promotes the unique, sustainable, and attractive attributes of print, paper, and paper-based packaging. We are a global organization and we operate in the territories marked on the map. We do have country managers based in North and South America, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, and throughout Europe. Our campaigns in these different territories reflect the facts and figures from those regions, so any kind of materials we produce would be relevant to that specific region. Just talking a bit more about the European country managers, we operate in the UK, France, Germany, Austria, Italy, and the Nordics. So that's who TwoSides are. I'll now talk about what TwoSides do and the 3 key areas of work that we have. So we have the anti-greenwash campaign, and that tackles misleading statements made on paper and the environment. We have the Love Paper campaign, which talks directly to consumers, educating them on the sustainability of print and paper. And then we have our resources and information. The resources and information is all of our key materials which back up everything we do and say with facts sourced from trusted and reliable sources. And before I go into these 3 areas in more detail, I do have some data to share that we've recently gathered, which I'm sure you'll find quite interesting. So this is data from our 2023 TwoSides Trend Tracker survey. It's a survey which we've very recently conducted. We actually got our answers back in January of this year, so the data is incredibly fresh and we are still working through it. But I do have some key headlines to share with you. So the Trend Tracker survey is published every 2 years to monitor the changing trends in consumer perceptions, preferences, and habits. The research was conducted in a number of global countries, and the data will be available in the global markets listed on the slide. However, today, just for time and ease, really, I'm going to give a quick overview of the immediate headlines for Europe as a whole. The full report will be available in May in the global territories. So here are some of the key headlines from the European data. Consumers still believe European forests are shrinking. Now, this number has improved, but we still have work to do to reassure consumers that, in this case, European forests are actually growing. There is still a significant gap between consumer belief in our industry's recycling record and the reality of it. And COVID had an immediate impact on consumer reading preferences, but our data has shown a recovery post-pandemic. And paper packaging is still the preferred environmental consumer choice for packaging materials. So, starting off and looking at the European consumer environmental perceptions, we can see that 60% of Europeans believe that European forests are shrinking. Just a quick explanation to the graph. The grey boxes show consumers who believe European forests are shrinking, and the green boxes are those who believe it to be growing. Again, the survey is global. I do just want to clarify that the question was made specific for the markets that the survey took place into. So, for instance, North America, it'll be talking about Canadian forests. Obviously, Europe is talking about European forests. I'm also quite likely to flick through these slides quite quickly, so the presentation will be made available to Ingi afterwards, and obviously you can all view it as well if you are interested in looking over these in a bit more detail. You can see here that over the years, the number of consumers we've questioned who believe that European forests are growing is increasing, which is good news for us because it's true. It's a common myth that European forests are shrinking, but the fact of it is that they are growing in size by roughly 1,500 football pitches every day. And this is one of our key messages that we communicate to brands, organizations, and consumers. We can also see from the data that 18% of European consumers understand the European recycling rate for paper and paper packaging to exceed 60%. The actual recycling rate for paper being 74% in Europe and 83% for paper packaging. We can also see that the majority of European consumers we surveyed don't believe the recycling rates exceed 39% for each material apart from paper and paper packaging. Again, just looking at the trend over time, we can see an increase over the years from European consumers who understand the European paper recycling rate exceeds 60%. Not sure what happened in 2019 to raise the consumer understanding so high, but that is one of the things that we will be investigating further as our analysis of the data continues. Again, this growth in awareness over time is good. Because another myth is that paper is a wasteful product, when the truth is paper is one of the most recycled products in the world. This slide is quite full, so I'll slow down a little bit for you just so you can have a look on this one properly. But the green bars show European consumers who agree or strongly agree. The blue bars show those who neither agree or disagree, and the grey bars show those who disagree or strongly disagree. And it's good to see that the majority of consumers agree it is important to use paper products from sustainably managed forests. It's good to see that, a lot of consumers can clearly understand what type of products they can put in their recycling bin. So the messages that are on packaging materials, on paper products, for instance, if it's shown to be recycled or that it can be recycled, it's clear that consumers can understand that and they will act accordingly. We can also see that 56% of European consumers believe electronic communication is better for the environment than paper-based communication. And as the previous slide showed, many European consumers believe electronic communication is better for the environment. But what many consumers don't realize is that electronic communication also has its own environmental impacts. From the energy required to power the huge data servers for the web and the cloud to the low recycling rates of the electronic devices. I do want to stress that TwoSides are not anti-digital in any way. We use digital all the time for our websites, for social media channels, for presentations just like this. We do, however, feel it's important to counter environmental arguments when people say going digital is better for the environment. It's not as clear cut as that. It's just not that simple to compare the two platforms. Digital and print really should be working hand in hand together to provide benefit for the other platform. Now, looking at consumer reading habits. The data from our previous surveys shown on the slide is 2017, 2021, and the current 2023 survey. The top line shows the numbers from 2017. The bottom line shows the data from 2021, when COVID was taking over the world and many normalities and daily routines were drastically changed. And we can see the reading preferences in print drastically dropping over that period. However, the middle line showing 2023 numbers does show a recovering growth in reading preferences for print post-COVID. So that was just a very quick overview of the key European headlines. Just a reminder that this data will be published in May 2023. The European report will be available in English, French, German, and Italian, and North America and South America will have their own reports published as well. And just for your interest, we will be creating several press releases based on the findings of this survey and sharing them with press on national and international levels as well. And members of TwoSides will have access to most of the data from the survey with country-by-country analysis of how consumers answered by age and gender. So we have got all the questions we've asked quite broken down into detailed level to understand how consumers from different ages voted on their preferences. Now, returning back to the key areas that TwoSides work on, we start with the anti-greenwash campaign, the goal of which is to tackle misleading negative statements made about print and paper and the environment. So, print is wasteful, paper destroys forests, move to e-billing and save a tree. These types of messages are partly the reason why TwoSides was founded. So TwoSides tackles these type of statements, these type of misleading anti-paper statements by engaging the brands, organizations, companies making these statements, communicating with them directly and telling them the facts about print and paper. And these messages are everywhere. I'm sure many of you will have seen messages like this from your service providers and utility companies. These messages are highly damaging to the print and paper industry and are often used by companies to encourage the customers to go digital, not for the environment, but for cost-saving reasons. And the unfortunate truth, is that greenwashing cases are increasing. On the slide, we have a very small selection of examples of companies caught to be greenwashing, all three of which TwoSides has actively engaged with and succeeded in making them remove their greenwashing messages. And these messages reach millions of consumers, so it's vital that TwoSides actively challenge misleading environmental messages. If you notice a utilities or service provider or brand greenwashing, please let us know by emailing TwoSides or emailing me directly as well. And just to give you a global greenwash update, as of January 2023, globally, TwoSides has researched over 3,400 companies, of which we've engaged directly with over 2,100 of them. And of those 2,100, over 1,000 have changed or removed their misleading environmental messages. Okay, so that was anti-greenwash. Moving on to our Love Paper campaign. The campaign talks directly to consumers to improve public perceptions of print, paper, and paper-based packaging. So TwoSides as a whole is B2B, business to business, talking to brands and organizations, whereas Love Paper, we talk directly to consumers. The Love Paper adverts appear globally throughout Europe, USA and Canada, Brazil, South America, South Africa, and New Zealand. We have worked with publishers in other countries, like India, for example, to run the Love Paper adverts, but the countries that I've just mentioned are the ones in which we regularly run the adverts. If you are a publisher on this call and you would like to use Love Paper adverts in your titles, in your region with region-specific facts, please get in touch and we'll happily have a discussion on it. So in 2022, globally, we had 1,850 adverts placed in national newspapers and magazines. The Love Paper adverts reach more than 240 million consumers every year through print channels. So through this advertising space in printed newspapers and magazines, we are able to directly talk to consumers, educating them on the facts around print, paper, and the environment. And the Love Paper adverts themselves communicate messages on quite key areas of our industry. So it's the renewable energy used to produce paper and paper packaging, paper recycling rates, and forest growth. Again, these adverts are created to be region specific. So in North America, for instance, these messages would talk about the US and Canadian renewable energy rates, paper recycling rates, and forest growth. We also have adverts which talk about biodiversity, forestry and paper jobs, and the carbon which is absorbed by forests. So we've focused on the areas which we found people are in high discussion about, and we wanted to address it with simple to understand consumer-friendly messages. And all of the adverts link to a website with simple and easy to understand content, again, around print, paper, biodiversity, and the environment. And we also produce regular articles on relevant subjects and have a paper activity section for younger audiences, as we are trying to reach everyone. We also have a dedicated social media presence on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And we reach more than 13 million consumers every year through social media channels alone. And we encourage our own industry to use the logo. We encourage our members, we encourage brands and publishers to use the Love Paper logo, really to help communicate the positive facts around print, paper, and paper-based packaging. I do just want to clarify that the Love Paper logo is not a certification mark like the FSC logo, for instance, but it is a marketing device to encourage consumers and customers to find out more about print, paper, and the environment, and how they can kind of help tell positive messages around their products. So if you are interested in using the Love Paper logo, please follow the link on the slide here. Otherwise, please email me directly and I can discuss you through it. Members of TwoSides do have access to all of the Love Paper materials as well, which does include the logos. So that was Love Paper. And finally, we are on the tools and resources. Here we have two of our key materials, the Myths and Facts booklets, which busts 9 myths around print and paper. So like the slides you saw earlier, presents the myth around the industry, it provides solid-based facts based on reliably sourced information. And then, of course, we also have the packaging booklet, similar to the Myths and Facts booklet, but specifically talking about paper packaging. We also have produced a series of fact sheets which cover some of the topics mentioned in the Myths and Facts booklets, but these are in much more detail on selected topics. We've also produced a series of factographics and mini videos, which are great for social media channels as they communicate short messages and are just quick and snappy and easy to read. And we keep our members informed, members and stakeholders informed with half-yearly reports of our successes and developments, highlighting key results from our campaigns. It's a good touch point from us, and it's a good way for us to just keep in contact with our members so they're aware of what we're doing, and always it's a good way to see if we can jump on board with any projects. And we attend and present at events, very much like this webinar. And we also provide training for our members, helping their marketing teams to make sure they don't use greenwashing messages themselves and know what positive messages they can use to talk about their industry. So that's everything. Those were some great reasons to love paper, and I've talked about who TwoSides and Love Paper are. And that's me. So I think I'll allow Inji to jump back in. If I stop sharing.
Thank you, Josh, for a very insightful presentation. You have, like PrintPower, quite a lot of resources to dig into, I think. I think I just start by asking Ulbe here we have several questions here to ask. You mentioned, Ulbe, and you showed a pie chart about people reaching out to you, or like, and you could even specify that through LinkedIn, I guess.
Yeah.
Is it mostly people who are artistic, or what's the background there? I mean, why are people looking to find out more about paper?
Well, what we find is that it's a very diverse group. We have people who ask us what kind of technologies can be used in making a simple advert more interesting, by using other printing techniques or using special paper grades or whatever. So that is less relevant for a newspaper, but still for an insert that could be interesting. And that has a lot to do with how can we optimize the creative use of print adverts. And there's a lack of know-how among the art directors that currently go into advertising agencies. There's a lack of knowledge among media people about print. And what the kind of questions we get from them is really about, well, what is the creative potential? When I go and present, for example, the content of our booklets of Cannes Advertising Festival, then most of them are very surprised to see the kind of things that are possible in print, because they've never heard about it, they've never seen it. So there's an important role to play there. So that's one group. What we see as well is people who want to have more facts. And that is a very important thing. Of course, what we want to present is more facts about how print can be an important part of your media mix in terms of their own effectiveness, but also when you have print in your media mix, you will also amplify the effectiveness of other channels. So there's a very strong amplification of the effectiveness of other channels once print is part of the mix. And a lot of questions are about that aspect. And this is important because it's also a signal that in the market, that kind of research is not that readily available. So people ask us to see whether we have that kind of information available.
I'm also quite interested because I used to work in advertising, and I see you have a background there as well. How is the advertising industry being receptive to this? I mean, are they online, or are they somewhat receptive about the paper?
Well, they are receptive, but it is not their first reaction. I mean, when years ago, when a briefing entered in an advertising agency and the creative team started to work on that, then they were thinking of TV and maybe print or radio. Today, when you get a briefing into a creative department, the first reflex is, well, what can we do online? And what can we do on TV? And they are not, I mean, print advertising is not one of the first things that come to mind when you think about creating a new campaign. And that is what we need to, I mean, that is why this inspiration bit is so important, because we want to show the creatives what is possible. And to a great extent, they don't know. And that has to do with the new generation. And if you look at the age of people at creative departments, there's always new people entering agencies and young people. And these younger generations, which are now also at marketing positions with major advertisers, they're grown up in a different media landscape. And therefore, they're less confronted with print adverts. And therefore, they might not think about print after initial briefing.
But when I speak to a graphic designer, for instance, a newly educated graphic designer, they're always interested in paper. They
Yeah,
love paper. So that's very interesting concept, that you have the young generation coming out of school, very interested in paper. So that's a positive sign, at least. Maybe I'll ask just a little bit about the greenwashing. I was very interested in hearing this, because this is, of course, are there any consequences, for instance, in the UK for greenwashing? I mean, if you because obviously you're misleading your customer, are there any consequences for that?
Well, there have been recently introduced regulations around greenwashing. So greenwashing is being tackled a lot more by governmental organizations. But what we do generally is we'll always engage with the brand or organization directly. We'll try and just have a discussion with them first to see, and like hopefully get them to understand our facts, understand why what they're saying isn't correct, and just have a general polite discussion on how we can change it. If that doesn't work and some more serious actions are required, we do refer them to the Advertising Standards Authority, who will then look into it much more detail, and they can action it to be changed if required. Okay, just coming back to it, because all of your facts, both of you have great facts to back up your story. Has this been, or can it be taken somewhat to the school system? Because just educating children about this and telling them up to the facts, is that possible, or is it feasible? What would you say about this? If I could ask both of you for that, maybe if you could start Ulbe for that.
Yeah, well, it has a lot to do with the school system, and I think with specialist schools leading up to marketing courses and media courses, but also creative courses. And obviously on creative courses, there is some print on the curriculum, but most of it is online, unless you're a graphic designer, because a graphic designer is much more into graphic work, which is on paper mostly. An art director within an agency, he is thinking about how to develop creative work for different channels like online, and he isn't educated into how to make adverts for print. So there's a lack, and there's a lack in marketing. I mean, if you pick up one of the most recent marketing books or advertising books that are used on universities or other schools, then you'll notice that the number of pages that are relating to print advertising the number is very low compared to other channels. So it is already part of the curriculum. So how do you want people who have succeeded for their marketing courses and media courses, how do you want them to consider more print advertising if in their courses there's not a lot of attention given to it? So yes, there is a big role to play in the education part.
What do you say, Josh, about this?
I agree with everything that Ulbe said. I think it's really important that we do get into the education stream and we do talk to the younger audiences. Obviously, Ulbe and me are talking about slightly different things within the print and paper sphere. Talking about the environment, we have had some success getting into schools with some of our messages, but we found it's just incredibly difficult to actually start that conversation to then get in and have those talks with people there. We have worked in the UK with another not-for-profit organisation called National Book Tokens, and they are a not-for-profit organisation which donates book vouchers and things like that, and children can use those to buy books, of which we had a competition advert sponsored by them. And because it was sponsored by them, it meant they could go directly into schools newsletters, into magazines for school children. So it's a good way for us to reach, again, the younger audiences, the education stream, but it's just finding that way in. I think a lot of schools are quite, I don't know if set in their ways is the right way of saying it, but they're being encouraged to move to digital for like their classrooms and things like that. Mm-hmm. I think it's important that there is a reminder that print and paper is valuable in a school environment.
Good. We have one of the questions. I'll come to the questions here, but one of the questions is kind of around this. So the question is, I believe greenwashing should be tackled starting from schools. We've been taught that paper is manufactured by cutting down trees. So basically, the attendee here is saying that they're taught in school that paper is bad because it's killing trees. And that's, of course, a misconception already there in schools. And I mean, yeah, of course, that should be tackled.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And we are trying to get into contact with more and more schools, but it is just that initial step to have those conversations.
Mm-hmm. Josh, here's a question for you. What is the demand in the EU from readers and consumers for publishers to make the use of FSC and PEFS paper only?
Well, I think in the UK specifically, I think it's incredibly difficult to buy paper or paper products which aren't FSC or PEFC certified anyway. So I think it is a clear understanding that if you're operating within the UK, most of the paper that you'll be buying, if not all of it, should already be FSC certified, PEFC certified. So as on an industry level, it should already be there. On a consumer level, I think it's just about educating them more on what FSC and PEFC is and what it does. Because the logos are on a lot of paper products, but if you ask a consumer what they mean, they might not know. So that's kind of another thing that we are here for. The Love Paper campaign, again, seeing a link, seeing a logo on a product, go through to the website. We even have blogs explaining what some of the environmental logos are, like FSC, PEFC.
Yeah, thank you. Here's another one. Lack of awareness is one of the reasons for perceiving things differently, especially in case of paper. But are there any other reasons, do you think, than the lack of awareness from people?
I think cost probably does have a factor with it. I think a lot of companies, again, this fits in with the greenwashing. Utilities organizations and companies like that will want to push their customers to go to digital for cost-saving reasons, using an environmental message as a reason to do so. Quite a lot of the time, they won't actually source where they get this information from. So it is kind of open-handed, but the consumers reading it take it as a fact. They read it that is the fact. And obviously it's not right. When we are notified of this, we will engage them directly. And again, this is where the new regulations are coming into play in the UK, and also how the Advertising Standards Authority can also introduce themselves to it.
Okay, thank you, Josh. I want to finish up with one question and ask you both, and I'll ask Ulbe to start, and then Josh, you can take over. How can this group of people, of course, people who signed up for this webinar are paper enthusiasts, I would guess. They're not people who hate paper. And how can they support your organizations?
Well, I mean, obviously they can help us in reaching more people. If they make sure that they follow us on LinkedIn, for example, they can subscribe to our newsletters. That will help to create more awareness for what we do. But at the same time, they could also be talking to their clients about TwoSides and PrintPower and help to generate awareness among advertisers. Because it's a message for advertisers, it's a message for media people, it's a message for sustainability people. And the more people talk about it, the better it will be to have our promotion the necessary effects we intended to have. So it is important that the more people talk about it. So I'm very happy to go and present together with people who are now following the webinar, to present to their clients what print can do. I mean, that is part of what we try to do. And so if that is something they could help us with, great, excellent.
Okay, thank you. Josh?
Again, I think everything that Ulbe said is correct. I think sharing awareness of both PrintPower and TwoSides is a key thing. I think using the Love Paper messages, if you're a publisher and interested in running the ads, they're a great way to raise awareness of, well, your own printed products as well. And then, of course, greenwashing. If you notice any examples, please send them to us and we'll investigate it.
Great. I thank you both for a very informative session. And I strongly encourage the audience here to contact them if they have any questions. I will send out Ulbe, can I have your slides as well to send out to the attendees?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you will get the slides from both of the, if you registered for this webinar, you will get the slides. I sent them to you. And I strongly encourage you, also the attendees, to support them because they're working hard here. Thank you both for good presentations. And
thank you,
have a lovely afternoon. Take care.
Thank you, Angie, for having us, and thank you for listening.
All the best.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.